Kinzo really racked his brains to venture out, and even dared to bribe an elder. Kaya, who was sound asleep in the early morning, was forcefully awakened by someone. She had not fully regained her senses when she heard Julia shouting excitedly, "My bottleneck broke on its own!" Kaya remembered to inform senior brother before she returned to seclusion. Kaya, who was originally in a daze, was immediately startled awake. Wait, she took a nap and the bottleneck broke just like that. Masters Jr. is quite refreshed at the moment. Remember to inform senior brother about this. I will come to assist him in pill refining once I emerge from seclusion. Junior sister suddenly heard a message in her ear. Kaya instinctively responded. Kinzo continued to convey what Masters Jr. said. I heard it. I will probably need to go into seclusion for 3 months. After 3 months, I may have to go out for a trip. It will probably take 3 to 5 years to return from this trip. Senior brother, you are about to go out to undergo the heavenly tribulation. Kaya was first happy, then a little lost. Since she came, she has never been unable to see senior brother for so long. Kinzo, worried, reminded again. When I leave, I will wake Master up. Please, Master, do not go into life and death seclusion in these few years. Remember not to wander around. Always keep my previous instructions in mind. Don't be careless and be taken advantage of. Listening to senior brother's endless instructions, Kaya, long accustomed to it, already knew. Senior brother, when you emerging from seclusion, it's not too late to talk about these things. In the blink of an eye, 3 months have passed. Kinzo lowered his head and looked at the faint blue light shining in the palm of his hand. He hadn't expected it. Returning to the path of the 9th realm came much earlier than he had anticipated. Now everything is ready. He just lacks a reason to leave. The rules of the Immortal Salvation sect are strict. If a disciple who has not attained immortality wants to leave the sect gate without permission, they can't even pass through the mountain protection formation. However, this is also to restrain the words and actions of the disciples, to urge them to cultivate and to protect their safety. Kinzo is listed in the disciple registry of the Immortal Salvation sect. He is an excellent return to Void Stage 2 Chi cultivator, with quite strict restrictions on his outings. In order to pass through the heavenly tribulation this time, Kinzo has long been prepared with reasons for his departure. He smiles calmly. Fortunately, our little peak is rich in spiritual fish. Upon arriving at the Hall of Wonders, Kinzo navigated his way to find the elder he was familiar with. He expressed his desire to return to his hometown to sweep the tomb. People's hearts are made of flesh and grow, and the Tao heart also experiences the tribulation of the mortal world. But the elder remembered that both of his parents had passed away 18 years ago. Where does the tribulation of the mortal world come from? Kinzo calmly took out the spiritual fish he had prepared beforehand, and earnestly told him that despite his recent seclusion, he found that he had not completely severed his ties with family affection. Even though a Chi cultivator may detach from worldly affairs, they still need to uphold loyalty, righteousness, propriety, and filial piety. The elder's face lit up with a smile upon seeing the spiritual fish. He hastily took those spiritual fish wrapped in water balls, and put them into his pocket. Then he cleared his throat, saying, "Since you are so filial, I will naturally fulfill your wish." Truly deserving of being Kinzo. Just let him cross the tribulation when you mention he crosses the tribulation. First, he bribed the elder of this sect to escape. Then he used both the earth escape and water escape techniques to escape. He managed to run far away, which was considered successful. It was already a deserted and remote island where nobody would question him. I could tolerate that. But he felt it was not enough. Even in such a desolate place, he used physical disguises, illusion techniques, and 2 layers of shape-shifting techniques as an additional precaution. I really admire this Kinzo. Elder reminded you that you are a promising seedling in cultivation. Your future is limitless, so remember not to cause trouble or break the rules, and do not be attached to the mundane world. Do not let worldly desires cloud your Taoist heart. Disciple remembers Kinzo's words seriously. This trip, I also want to take the opportunity to undergo several years of cultivation trials in the southern continent. Can Sec Steward not go to my hometown to investigate? Also, don't let Sec Steward take me there. The elder readily agreed that these are all trivial matters. Go ahead, the sooner the better. Kinzo hurriedly bowed and expressed his thanks. In his plan to cross the tribulation. This is a very crucial and must be achieved small step. He quickly flew to the Sec gate after leaving Sky Peak. He took the jade token for going out and said that he was returning home to sweep the graves. The immortal in charge of guarding the Sec gate also reminded Kinzo to be careful outside. Kinzo thanked them twice and flew out of the Sec gate on a cloud. On his way, he used the earth escape technique against mountains and the water escape technique against water. 2 weeks later, in the northeast of the southern continent, Kinzo successfully found his parents' grave on a hill. He also presented the fruits and pastries he prepared on the way, burned 2 rolls of yellow paper, lit 3 sticks of incense, and cowed out 4 times. He stayed near the grave of his deceased parents for 7 days. Even though his parents had passed away a long time ago, the ties of kinship still connected him closely to them. After bidding farewell to his parents, Kinzo once again prepared to embark on his journey to the place where he had pre-selected to cross the tribulation. The place he chose is at the edge of the mundane world, on a very secluded and inconspicuous little island. This is what he considered the best place to cross the tribulation. However, it is not enough, as he also needs to disguise himself. There are several basic principles for disguising one's appearance and form. In Kinzo's opinion, using just illusion technique or shape-shifting technique alone is far from sufficient. He first needs to change his appearance using physical methods such as makeup techniques. After that, he will apply a specially made ultra-thin water-moistened silk mask. Then he will transform into a Taoist using the illusion technique, followed by using 2 layers of shape-shifting technique. In this way, if a sage were to take a glance at him, even if they see through the 2 layers of technique disguise, they still won't be able to see his true appearance. Since the last trip to the East Sea, Anthony has not been defeated in battle. Dragon is still immersed in comfortable and dry fantasies. This has further reinforced Prince's determination to do something big again. He wants to awaken his tribe. In the East Sea Crystal Palace, Dragon Youth Anthony is bound with chains to an iron pillar. His eyes are tightly closed. Echoing in his ears are his father's angry shouts one after another. At the celebratory banquet that day, the Dragon King was so angry that he smashed the cups and dishes. He glared angrily, rebuking his son's absurdity. Just because he said that sentence. I want to worship Master Immortal Salvation Sect Cultivate Trinity Sect Saint Law. You should know that if he goes to worship at the Saint Sect, it will be considered a great offense. Going out to worship and cultivate will be considered rebellion against the Dragon Sect. In terms of both emotion and reason, he will be ridiculed by people within the Dragon Sect. Nevertheless, even so, the look in his eyes remains firm. Dragon Mother felt sorry for her son and kept pleading with the Dragon King, saying that he was just a little shaken up from the last arena fight. Then she turned her head and earnestly advised him to apologize as soon as possible. Our techniques are not meant to be used like this. Our treasures are not for you to play with. Why do you insist on acting so foolishly? And in front of so many elders and uncles within the clan, speaking such absurd and unreasonable words. Do you want to pay your respects at the Saint's door? Do you know that aside from the intercepting sect, the Saint's door doesn't accept any descendants of the Dragon family? In the beginning, when the master of the explaining sect accepted a cursed dragon disciple, they believed that they stripped away the dragon family's final fortune and placed it on this cursed dragon. How could such humiliation within the clan be easily forgotten? Anthony is unaware of his mother's words as well as whether they are true or false. Explaining sect one of the 12 golden immortals, the yellow dragon immortal, clearly has dragon bloodline. He was heavily injured and accidentally fell into Kunlun Mountain, where he was taken care of by the 3 pure ones, who had not achieved the status of saint at that time. He became a treasured dragon in the house of the 3 pure ones. Before the ancient saint emerged, the dragons were ashamed of their disconnection from the yellow dragon immortal, who was then removed from the dragon registry. After the 3 pure ones became saints, the dragons were too proud to flatter the yellow dragon immortal, and rumors began circulating within their clan accusing him of being a bastard. After the 3 pure ones became saints, a group of dragon sages brought their young dragons to seek apprenticeship. They were respectful towards the saints, but hesitated when they learned that the Tontian sect leader, who had the lowest threshold for accepting disciples, would only allow the most outstanding dragon disciples to become apprentices of the saints. They did not directly apprentice themselves to the saints. The dragon sages turned back, feeling that the saints intended to humiliate them. In fact, in Anthony's eyes, the dragon's arrogance is the most absurd. This remark directly angered the Dragon King. He then locked him up with iron chains. Anthony understood. Now only he, as the Dragon King's prince, could completely humble himself. He had to go and apprentice himself under the Immortal Salvation sect, which was ranked below average within the Trinity Immortal sect, even if he had to kneel for a long time before entering the sect. By becoming a registered disciple, he could break the dragon's meaningless pride and shatter their twisted self-esteem. This was the dragon's only way out. 3 months later, at the Deep East Sea, Crystal Palace, he watched his own son suffer the torment. Dragon Mother could only cry sadly without stopping. The Dragon King felt a bit at a loss seeing her like this. He also thought about quickly finding someone to take the blame and resolve this matter. Dragon King ordered a thorough investigation quickly. A musician from the aquatic clan, who taught Dragon's son, was made the scapegoat. Later, Prince Anthony of the Dragon Palace was tied up in a huge clam-shaped boat, speeding towards the border between the South Sea and the East Sea. Now the Dragon King is going against public opinion, suppressing all voices. He can only let Prince Anthony go out for a while to avoid the limelight. Meanwhile, Kinzo has already prepared his disguise. At the junction of the South Sea and the East Sea lies Immortal Island, where a fairy light surrounds it, resembling a giant turtle. In a treasure pool at a corner of Immortal Island, a small azure dragon is slowly looking around with its eyes just emerging from the water's surface. It's time for the great Luo Golden Immortal to give a lecture on Taoism again. Nearby cultivating immortals all went to listen. And he finally had a chance to escape. As early as when Prince was 6 years old, he had memorized the routes of the 4 seas. From then on, he began to head south. He traveled along the coastline of the southern continent towards the eastern continent, disguising his tracks with the turbid airs of the mortal world. Afterward, he landed at the border between the southern continent and eastern continent, stealthily advancing towards the eastern continent, and with a splash, dived into the water. His figure slowly shrank and quickly turned into a length of about 3 feet. He swam towards a crevice at the bottom of the water. When he opened his eyes again, he had arrived on the eastern coast of the southern continent near the East Sea. On the continuous coastline, there was a fishing village built from simple stones. An old man inside a house walked towards the Taoist with a bowl of hot water. The Taoist drinking water was Kinzo, who had just given away some talismans in the village. At this moment, he received the warm gratitude of the villagers. He also used this as a cover. This made his actions at the East Sea more reasonable. He can earn some fortune and merit for himself. However, this talisman is not given casually by him. He deeply understands that helping the good will bring good results, and helping the evil will bring bad results. But because he cannot determine the talisman, he omits himself, whether he is helping good people or bad people. The most prudent approach is for him to freely distribute some intentionally erroneously drawn talismans that have no significant effect as aids to sleep by the pillow. By doing so, he will not incur any karma. Suddenly, he realizes that a strong and overbearing immortal sense is constantly searching nearby. At the same time, in the distance on the sea surface, a giant dragon's figure quietly passes by, quickly disappearing into the clouds. He raised his head and carefully examined it. Indeed, it was a dragon. It seems like they are searching for something. Although Kinzo cannot see the figure of the dragon sage, their aura is completely unhidden. Even hundreds or thousands of miles away, it can still be felt. No matter what they are looking for, Kinzo still feels it's better to leave this place quickly. So, he transformed himself into a fish, neither big nor small. Without saying a word, he jumped into the sea. After swimming for a while, Kinzo suddenly saw a small island ahead. His spiritual sense found a pretty good island. The small island is generally round and ring-shaped. Upon closer inspection, it looks quite like a playful little fish. In fact, it is just several small mountains protruding from the sea. Although he seemed quite satisfied with the island's appearance, he decided to get closer to explore further. There are still more than 10 miles away from the small island. He suddenly saw a small whirlpool in the sea. Using his spiritual sense, he quickly discovered that there was a very hidden underwater cave at this location. He immediately decided to go in and take a look. The cave is very narrow. It has an overall upward sloping structure. But that alone is not enough. He then used his spiritual sense to investigate further. The cave actually connects to a small pond somewhere on the island. Not bad, a good place. There is also a natural escape route. The more Kinzo looked, the more satisfied he became. He decided that this is the place. After Anthony left Immortal Island secretly, he followed the underwater terrain and found this hidden rocky crevice. The disappearance of Prince has driven a group of dragon sages crazy searching for him. You are dreaming if you think you can capture me and take me back. Anthony transformed into human form, his body pressed against the cold, hard rock wall. He carefully explored the situation within 3 miles of the small island. He secretly operated the dragon secret technique, the hidden dragon technique. Suddenly, Anthony felt a danger approaching. But in fact, it was not something he had discovered, but the innate ability in his bloodline to sense danger. A Taoist from the human race suddenly appeared outside the cave and slipped into the crevice, approaching Anthony's location. Anthony breathed a sigh of relief as the Taoist's aura was no longer strong. He also did not notice himself using the hidden dragon technique. Just that he would be doomed if he moved forward. Good immortals are deceived by other immortals. A good dragon is ridden by immortals. I saw the Taoist approaching quickly. When the Taoist was only 3 zhan away from him, he suddenly launched an attack against the man posted on the cliff face. His figure shot up with a green flash. A dragon claw suddenly revealed its true form. Soon he transformed back into Azure Dragon and quickly searched the surroundings. Suddenly, a Azure Dragon head fiercely emerged from the sea. It opened its big mouth without hesitation. It seemed to want to swallow Taoist Kinzo in one bite. Its innate divine powers swallow the sky and devour the earth. Anthony opened his big mouth. It pretended to swallow this Taoist in one bite. Just at this moment, Kinzo clearly hesitated for a moment. But his reaction was also incredibly fast, almost instinctively dodging to the side. He quickly overturned the 2 porcelain bottles with his left hand. In the blink of an eye, the dragon's head shimmered with dazzling blue light in the seawater. The dragon bit off the Taoist's left arm directly and swallowed it whole. Suddenly, Anthony felt dizzy. He realized how powerful the hallucinogenic drug he had just ingested was. Meanwhile, the Taoist was holding a porcelain bottle that was emitting an effectiveness. He quickly looked inside and found a small paper man in his stomach. But the effectiveness was too strong. If he fainted, he would undoubtedly die. Anthony realized he had fallen into a trap. The power of the blood vessels in his dragon body erupted, and a blue light flickered on his forehead. The only thing he can do now is to take advantage of the fact that the 2 sources of effectiveness have not fully erupted yet, and kill the Taoist with the severed arm. The sea ahead suddenly cleared up. The Azure Dragon has burst out of the rocky crevice. But what he never expected was, in the dark seawater ahead, the Taoist stood there quietly. He showed no sign of wanting to escape, and his arms were perfectly unharmed. Indeed, it turned out to be just his projection. Taoist Kinzo calmly took out the gentle immortal incense. He poured the gentle immortal incense into the sea. Then he muttered and cut it into a paper man in an instant. Suddenly, several identical figures appeared behind the Taoist. Each of them was holding an open porcelain bottle in their hands. Anthony's increasingly massive dragon head lowered. The dizziness became more intense. His thinking became very slow. He only saw him open his dragon mouth and pounce forward. Polygonal mysterious ice appeared in the surrounding sea water. Flames were burning inside the ice. It was shooting towards the Taoist at the same time. They simultaneously used the water escape technique, and their 6 figures quickly dispersed in the seawater, each evading the attack. Anthony was getting dizzier. He shook his head hard. At this point, he had to make a quick decision. It was as if they could read Anthony's mind. The 6 figures had once again regrouped above him. The paper men quickly flew out one talisman after another. They interwove in the seawater to form a large net. The 108 talismans resembled 108 small formations. Spiritual power flowed on them. The water attribute's spiritual energy in the seawater was swiftly stirred up. Talisman formation water source heavenly shock seal. In the blink of an eye, a square seal with a diameter of 100 feet formed. It smashed down on the azure dragon charging from below. The surrounding light surged around the great seal, carrying the momentum of a landslide. Below, the azure dragon roared furiously with its mane exploding. Its claws stretched straight, charging fiercely towards the great seal. At this moment, Anthony had no extra mental capacity to contemplate. Intense dizziness made it impossible for him to continue judging. In his heart, there was only a strong will to fight. And the indomitable dragon-heart azure dragon roared, as the great seal descended. The visible shockwaves surged in the sea, causing towering waves on the 10-mile sea surface. The islands on the side kept trembling incessantly. The great seal shattered with a bang. The azure dragon turned out to be unscathed on its forehead. However, the large eyes on its slender head slowly closed. Its massive body seemed to have lost all strength, falling towards the sea floor hundreds of feet below. Kenzo frowned as he looked into the crevice of the seabed 300 feet away. His spiritual sense monitored the surrounding 30 miles. It seems his clone has already taken care of that little dragon. He watched as the falling azure dragon great seal exploded into pieces. Surprisingly, the azure dragon was unharmed externally. Kenzo felt doubtful. Dragons that have not yet attained immortality are able to withstand that much. It seems he needs to improve the formula of his gentle immortal incense. Kenzo fell into contemplation. It's time to verify the effectiveness of the true threefold flame. He casually took out 6 small silver flying swords from his sleeves. He threw them at the paperman clone. These 6 flying swords emitted wisps of white light. In the blink of an eye, they transformed into 3-foot-long precious swords. The sword was steadily caught by the 6 paper men. The little dragon just made a ruthless move. He directly aimed to take his life. It is reasonable for him to counterattack and kill him. He originally wanted to settle the karma on the spot and then calmly leave. It would be good to head to the edge of the South Sea to cross the tribulation and succeed before returning. At the same time, the 6 paper men split into multiple sword-wielding figures and danced above the 6 immortal swords. At the same time, bursts of true threefold flame were ignited. They have already arranged the 6-pointed sword formation with their intertwined figures. He operated the sword formation and attacked the azure dragon below. But what he never expected was a shimmering purple triangular scale appeared behind the azure dragon. This is the dragon's secret technique. Kenzo carefully analyzed it. It seems that this little dragon must be someone of noble status, most likely the target being pursued by the dragon sages. Generally speaking, if one sees this kind of purple scale shining and refrains from taking action, not only will they not be pursued, they may even receive gratitude from the Dragon Palace. Kenzo naturally doesn't care about any reward. He only hopes to not encounter such troublesome individuals. But if he kills this dragon now, his primary soul will be immediately locked by the dragon's secret technique. This also means that he will be endlessly hunted down by the dragon. Suddenly, a beam of light pierced into his eyes. He hurriedly reached out to block it. 6 paper men all stood suspended in the air. The light gradually faded away. Kinzo took another look at the dragon below, which had turned into a human form at some point. He is the prince of the Dragon Palace in the East Sea, who is fast asleep. It's actually him. How could he be here? Those dragon sages are searching from south to north. He then remembered the last time when that little dragon deliberately lost to him. Could it be that his conjecture that day was correct? At the Prince Demon Slaying Convention, he did indeed intend to humiliate the dragon in return. As a result, he ended up winning but losing in his scheming. Afterward, he went so far as to make an excuse to pay his respects at the saint's residence, continuing to provoke the dragon's nerves. In the end, this guy was sent to the intercepting sect to become a disciple. He fled to this place once again. Kinzo's guess was not wrong at all. This is indeed quite a drama. Kinzo calmed down to think. If Anthony escaped from the south and appeared here, looking at this guy's actions, it's obvious that he wants to go to the middle continent or the eastern continent, and it's even possible that his goal is to escape to the Immortal Salvation sect. If he really managed to escape to the Immortal Salvation sect, the most likely reaction from the Immortal Salvation sect would be to first stabilize this dragon's son, then find the Dragon Palace to inquire about the matter. In the end, things might turn out quite chaotic. The Immortal Salvation sect is after all his own sect. And this little dragon also has the protection of the dragon's secret technique. He cannot kill him directly. He is truly a troublemaker. Kinzo really lost big this time. He used up so many hallucinogenic drugs. He can't even collect dragon blood anymore. Kinzo released several paper men again to clean up the scene properly. At this moment, Anthony is quietly lying on a bamboo raft. The massive water flow is pouring directly onto his face from above. Several people working together will definitely have to clean him up. One is responsible for pouring water to rinse him, one is responsible for applying powerful soap powder to him, and another is responsible for scrubbing him with a strong steel brush. Anthony is in a coma. He feels like a salted fish with its internal organs removed. He is repeatedly rinsed with seawater from inside out. They don't even miss any details. During the rinsing process, 7 or 8 palms kept slapping him non-stop. This is very much like the Dragon Palace chef pounding meat. The top-quality snowflake unicorn beef makes the meat texture more perfect. After a while, a bamboo raft drifted northward into the deep sea. Anthony, who reeks of alcohol, lay quietly on the bamboo raft. Having consumed over 20 bottles of charming beauty wine, he is expected to sleep for several tens of days. Anthony is clean from head to toe. He has been thoroughly washed dozens of times. There is no trace of aura left beyond his own self. Even the tiny piece that was swallowed by Anthony. It cannot be digested by the dragon's stomach. The paper was manipulated by Kinzo using Paper Man. A future individual with a godlike view referred to this event as the dragon washing case. After 3 days, Dragon and the others finally found Anthony Prince. He was drifting alone at sea. Ever since Prince returned, he has been acting strange the whole time. It feels like he is afraid of something. His whole body is trembling uncontrollably. Although he is only 11 or 12 years old, he considers himself quite strong. Think about the 3 months of torment he endured from the ice pillars and iron thorns before. He still hasn't softened at all. But now his trembling is happening naturally, and it is not under his control. Dragon Mother feels heartbroken seeing him like this. She couldn't help but want to care for her son, but she was rejected by Anthony. He tried hard to recall everything that happened at that time. He was completely unconscious after being stunned by formation. However, his body and his bloodline retained many memories and sensations. High-quality ingredients often only require the simplest cooking methods. The dragon washing case left an indelible shadow on Anthony. Whenever he recalls this matter, he cannot help but show fear. He was so angry that he bit his lips. How could the human race be so deceitful? And that Taoist is not even human. He is more like a terrifying beast that devours dragons. He felt like he was about to be devoured by that demon-like human race. And he wouldn't let go of any part of his skin once being eaten. And this process of being treated as an ingredient was repeated at least dozens of times. He would try every method possible to process his own flesh, bringing out the taste of this dragon meat feast to the fullest. Are they facing each other in a head-on combat? Do humans only have delicious dragon meat on their minds? Perhaps this is the root cause of why dragons dare not start a war with the human race. It's terrifying to think about. At this point, he no longer dares to think deeply. There is definitely no winning chance. Two uncles beside him are having a conversation. According to the rules, they must thank Kinzo. He looks incredulous. No way, he almost got eaten himself. And now Dragon Palace even wants to thank the person who almost ate him. Dragon's family even wants to thank the monster and give him a reward. If all these things are also within the calculations of that human race Taoist, then he is simply too terrifying. Anthony's legs went soft again, and he sat back on the edge of the bed, taking a sharp breath. At the same time, on a coral island near the southern continent in the South Sea, wisps of spiritual energy gathered from the sea surface. Kinzo transformed into a Taoist. He is sitting cross-legged in a recessed rocky area. His whole body's aura is trembling gently. Breathing in and out freely and effortlessly, the heaven and earth are clear and bright. He is completely oblivious to himself. Within a radius of 10 miles, the fish and shrimp in the sea were attracted by the fragrance. Some spiritual beings also sensed the news and hurried over. After a while, Kinzo's forehead shimmered with a blue light. Suddenly, he seemed to sense something, opened his eyes wide, and the premonition of the upcoming heavenly tribulation grew even stronger. Last time, Master's heavenly tribulation was also hesitant and shy, dragging its feet. I wonder if his own heavenly tribulation will come gently or wild and fierce. His own heavenly tribulation should consist of 7 or 8 thunder, right?